Sir, have a tea for me. Please, sir. Tea soon, sir. You're welcome for that checkup. Please. हजुर रजिस्ट्रेसन गरी चेकअप लिनु भयो प्लिज है चेकअप वेलकम
Good morning, sir. I came just to borrow this. How are you, sir? Don't put it on the yes, sir. Yeah, but like the day I know, same for this guy. I think 3-4 days after he also joined. He was there in Bangalore for some years. Sir, how are you? Sir, how are you? Fine. Glad to meet you.
Before inviting Dr. Sunita Gandhi to share something with us, I would like to introduce her to you. Dr. Sunita Gandhi, PhD, Cambridge University, founder of Council for Global Education, USA, and Director of Edison Education, Target Plus and Global Classroom, international education research organization based out of UK and India. Her work has been published in the book Ipsative Assessment, Motivation Through Marking Progress by Professor Gwyneth Hughes, IOE, UK, and published by Springer. She is a proponent of the ideology of compete with yourself after studying the education systems of 38 countries firsthand. Dr. Gandhi also serves as Honorary Chief Academic Advisor of her family-run city Montessori school, Lucknow, the world's largest school, a Guinness World Record holder, and recipient of the UNESCO Prize for Peace Education. She has also served as an economist at the World Bank for a decade, where she was selected as a young professional and worked on education and development. And after having established Iceland's first 2 charter schools and an experimental school in the Czech Republic and the Education Society of Iceland. She has traveled to some 38 countries and studied their education systems. Her research-based work on education has been piloted in the UK, Iceland, and India. She is the recipient of the Visionary Award from the government of Uttar Pradesh, the largest state of India. She came back to India recently after 26 years overseas with a PhD in physics from Cambridge University, UK, where she received 3 merit-based scholarships, a 10-year tenure as an economist at the World Bank in Washington, D.C., USA. Dr. Gandhi has been an expert working with Finnish educators and the keynote speaker in Finland's annual educators conference organized by Finnish National Board of Education. In India, Dr. Gandhi has been fine-tuning and implementing a transformative education curriculum and assessments based on the principle of compete with yourself, which over 200 schools have adopted across India, UK, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Dubai, and Singapore. With this large-scale pilot, she's incubating an education more suited to the needs of children in the 21st century. The edifice of her efforts are constructed on the principle of compete with yourself and based on the foundation of the 4 building blocks of education: universal values, global understanding, excellence in all things, and service to humanity. Her latest project, Global Dream, is aimed at providing functional literacy to all the illiterate masses. The results from the implementation are startling, with 250,000 children leading a nationwide literacy campaign. The time-efficient and effective Global Dream curriculum developed by her allows a person to become reading capable on average in 15.5 hours with just 15 to 30 minutes of time investment per day for a month. Thank you.
What do you propose? That somebody needs to then move my slides. Do you have a pointer? To be here in Nepal this morning with you, the greatest educators of this great country. For me, when my team members were keen that I come to Nepal, I jumped at the opportunity because this will be my 39th country, and so I've added one more country today. I'm very happy to be here. I've had the opportunity to work in the trenches with the folks at the village level, in the slums, and so forth. And I've also had the opportunity to work at the World Bank in Washington, which, as you all know, is the premier institution by which we aid work of education across the world. I've also been fortunate to have been brought up in a family of educators where breakfast, lunch, dinner talk was all about education. And it was all about how we can inspire every single child to become not just smart, but good. So how to make them both good and smart, with more emphasis on being good than smart. So I hope it will not be just be a monologue, but it will be somewhat of a dialogue with you, and we can all work together to look at education for the 21st century. The presentation title, you may have seen something else earlier, but it's basically all about the same thing. Ultimately, it's creating a new normal and how to maximize learning gain as well. So creating a new normal may go beyond just learning. We know that every child is a very precious gift. Here's a child whose slide when she was age 9, and I found it in her laptop. There were 2 slides. This was one, there's another. And in this slide, this is exactly the slide copy without the picture. The picture has been added on. She wrote for herself, guess who? Kind, 1 in a million, marvelous, awesome, and lovely. Guess who? Komal. Right. This is a 9-year-old child, Komal. And I think in this picture she's younger. But anyway, this is what every single child feels. They are 1 in a million. They're marvelous, awesome, and lovely. This is when they're born, and when education hasn't told them you're not good enough. They think the world of themselves. And they're full of... Pardon? Oh, okay. All right. This is what we do. We put children in a class construct, and we test them. We evaluate them. And as you can see, the box in orange, class 2, is the children, average children in their class. Some are above, and majority are below. And if you look at the average and below, that's more or less in every single class across the world, about 80% of the children. And very early on, they learn, whether in one subject or overall, that they're just not good enough. They don't cut it. They're not as good as somebody else. And this, I think, is killing the future of our children. We cannot underscore that much more. So the beautiful child that feels I'm 1 in a million feels, well, not really. I'm not even 1 in a few. And we lose them. So the question is, how do we foster the best development of all children? We also realize the reality of a child is not just material. We're creating a lopsided education by unduly emphasizing the material side. A child is a material being for sure, but child is also a divine being and a human being. Child lives as part of a community in which he has to learn all the human skills of dealing with each other, roles and responsibilities and everything else. And we don't necessarily do a fantastic job of that at the schools. Divine education, yes, we do to some extent. We have morning assemblies, we put quotations up, we talk to the children that they should be good. But perhaps we are not meeting the goals of divine education as we create the balance that we need in today's education. Students need to be prepared not just for today, as we all know, but for the future. So we know that change in education is imperative, but change will come with the belief that change is needed and is possible, that more can be done, and that children are definitely the future. And if we do something today about it, our future will be a lot better. There should be no room for poverty. Children are the future. We'll go away. We are getting older. T.S. Eliot said, education must help us escape from the present limitations of our own time. You know, we think in very limited ways. But that early morning bird that wakes up earlier than everybody else sees the great view and sees the sun rising. And I think we need to be like the early bird. And we should foresee the future coming and therefore plan for it a lot better. Context for today's education, we know that's derived from the 19th century and pretty much squarely there. When was the blackboard invented, which we call whiteboard or interactive whiteboard today, with all the facilities of the internet and everything on it, and the interactivity? So who invented the original? When was it invented? Forget who. When was it invented? Any clue? How many years ago?
About 50 years ago.
50 years ago? It's a good guess. Gave you a clue there. It's in multiples of that.
100 years.
100 years ago.
Well, may have been. We don't know what the Gurukuls did. Actually, we don't know. 1862, 200 plus year old lyric. And we still sing it now. Why can't we come with new tunes as much or as readily or as beautifully? So, and Renaissance in education. When was the last time there was a period of Renaissance in education? When true innovation took place?
14th century.
700 years ago.
Possibly, that's probably right. The latest we know is also perhaps the turn of the 19th century, 1907, Maria Montessori, Casa di Bambini in a suburb of Rome in Italy. You have Rudolf Steiner in Europe, in Germany, the Waldorf system, if you like. There's Rabindranath Tagore. There's a lot of Renaissance thinkers that brought about fundamental change in our thinking about education. Because Dr. Maria Montessori, she said, no, children don't like to destroy things, which is what was felt up until then. That children are actually, they love order. And they love to have things, they learn through the senses. It's not, they don't destroy things with the senses. If order is given in a certain manner, that you find children can be engaged for hours. Not just a few minutes, and they can be very settled, more than we can imagine. And that challenged thinking so dramatically. There was a lot of reaction to it. Columbia University professors wrote against it. It killed the movement for some time, but they couldn't hold it. And today, still, Montessori's come back after a huge setback during the Second World War, when it was by Mussolini completely almost wiped out from the world. Is coming back across the world. We see more and more Montessori across the world, because what Dr. Maria Montessori said were like the laws of physics about the child. Today, I hope I won't be a lecture for too long, otherwise I'll lose you and I don't know what you'll be thinking anymore, right? Nobody can control the thinking. So I want to have people participate, but this is how it is for so many years in a row for the children. So we put children in a classroom like this, give them loads of content like chemistry and physics and what have you, and then at the end of a year, you have a horrendous examination. Those who do very well in that examination become the white-collar workers, and the rest of them, 80% of them or more, become labor class, the blue-collar workers, right? So the blue-collar, white-collar methodology, not just Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, not just the board, now reinvented as an interactive whiteboard, all of these are methodologies of the past. We've seen the change, but change has been more in terms of not the what and the why of education, but in terms of how we teach. There's been hardly any questioning of what we're teaching in the first place, why are we teaching it, and so forth. So yes, technology has come in, but we're still teaching from the front, right? So these are some of the fundamental things that we have inherited from the past. We'll look at some of the other things, and maybe we need cotton ball. There's some cotton ball in here. God, help me please. In the bag, there's some cotton ball, wool, I think. Balls of wool. Okay, I'd like you to all stand up and just, do this for a minute for fun. I think education needs change today. The one who's holding the ball. You have to say something. Say something, you can't just keep passing the ball. Yeah. What change does education need today?
Skill.
G?
Skill.
Skill. Okay, skill. Please pass it on to somebody else. Anybody. Actually, now what you'll do is, when you're passing the ball, okay. What change does education need, sir?
How do you do it?
How do you do it? Fabulous, good point. It needs change, obviously.
Varieties in the lesson?
Pardon?
Varieties in the lesson in the classroom?
Variety of lessons in the classroom. Yeah, absolutely. Why not? Correct. Nothing can be wrong, because change is so much needed at so many levels in education. But I want to see or hear, we all want to hear each other, what everybody feels.
Education needs to be more engaging.
Education
Needs to be more engaging.
needs to be far more engaging. Are you being engaged right now?
Sorry again.
Are you being engaged
I
right
am,
now?
yes.
Okay.
Engaged with this.
All right. Awesome. Anybody? Yeah.
Leadership.
Louder, please.
Leadership.
Leadership.
Leadership. Absolutely. So lacking. Yep. No doubt. This kind of setting.
I mean, given such education which could make them independent.
Okay, so we need to make children independent. I suppose not just learners, but independent as people. And that's the change we need to see in education. That's the outcome we need to see. Right, next. Tighten your hands, finger maybe. Okay, anyway, whichever way you think. Okay.
Creative.
Then we need to teach creativity. Children need to be creative, correct? Obviously.
Innovative.
Needs to be more innovative. Okay? Alright, maybe we'll take 2 more views and then you will say it in your hearts, but just keep passing the ball.
Value.
G?
Value.
Values. Of course, my goodness. Okay, right. That has a lot of things in it. Right, 1 more view and then we'll just pass the ball. Actually, you can start a 2nd ball and 3rd ball. Let's create a web. Yeah, let's just start. Throw it to anybody. What's your name, please, sir?
Hari Adhikari. Hari Adhikari.
Mr. Hari Adhikari.
Mr. Hari Adhikari. Okay, fabulous.
Hari Adhikari.
Okay, fabulous. I'm glad you got the mic. Yeah. Throw the ball, anybody you wish. Keep throwing the other ball too.
Hello everyone, this is Dinesh Mubari, and in my opinion, we have to follow student-centered education.
Student-centric education. Fabulous.
Excuse me. Hello, this is Hemanta. I consider education as a way.
Education as a way.
As a way.
As a wave.
Yeah, it does not always follow the straight.
Okay.
It's not a
Right, you're seeing it as a wave,
Yeah.
maybe a 100-year wave.
Yeah.
Okay, so now time for a new renaissance. Right, that's my view also, that understanding as an individual, right, each child being special and being dealt as that. Okay, fabulous. Citizens. We can also run the mic over to everyone who's catching the ball. You're welcome to speak, of course, your name also, and if you really have something to share, you're welcome. Education, that we are one part of one human race. Is that what you mean, sir? That one, respect for all religions, respect for all kinds of people, cultures, values, okay?
Have to be psychological understanding. Psychological understanding should need in the modern education, in my view. Thank you so much.
Psychological understanding of the child. This is not happening.
High school, I think we have to adapt on technology, adaptation of technology.
Yeah. Okay. Right here. Adapt technology. Adopt. 60 to 80% level. 80% level. Clearly. But that's why you're here. Otherwise, you'll be sitting in your places. You will not be coming to any conference because you would have. I would have figured it out. I wouldn't be here either. I think the British taught us to be the chiefs and we be the Indians, job seekers, but not job providers. This is British education. We're all following. I mean, look at the 19th century education, 1840s. It was all in England. This, blue collar, white collar, material education, compete with others, thought processes. All these are material thought processes. It creates followers, not leaders. Somebody mentioned leadership. Do we create leaders or do we create primarily followers? Compete with followers. Compete with others and get better marks than others. Isn't that what we are teaching them? Just compete. Doesn't matter how you get there, get the marks.
Just marks.
Yeah, I saw this picture in Bihar, parents climbing up to give purchase
Yes.
to
To
their own children, so the children may cheat.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of world are we living in? Yeah.
What sanskar we are giving to children?
What kind of values and sanskar are we giving to the children? Absolutely. We tend to weigh, in this 19th century model, we tend to weigh success by external factors regardless of means. Class dynamics are more important than those of the individual child. Even with the interactive whiteboard, how much is personalized learning going on, child-centered education happening. Teacher at the center, not the child. Yeah? If a child parents comes in by mistake and says my daughter felt the teacher was not nice to her, the management like ourselves will fail to recognize the child or the parent. Very often we will say the child is at fault. That's our thinking. You know, Alfie Kohn, one of the greatest writers of this time, he says, author in education and speaker, he says that children are, schools are like jails. We're there to see what's wrong and reprimand them for that. We're always looking after what they're up to, what's wrong. You know, our thinking has to change vastly in that direction. Higher education is considered more important than pre-primary education. How many agree with that here in Nepal? Yeah? It's pretty dominant thought process. We pay, whom do we pay more? Pre-primary teachers or higher secondary teachers?
Obviously the later ones.
Obviously the later ones. But why? Yeah? Do we need to change our thinking in relation to that? Yeah? Shouldn't the pre-primary teachers be the best trained and the best prepared?
Exactly.
It's so much more complex to teach a little child. Yeah? Alright. And then psychology, the person who mentioned psychology. In preparation of the teacher as a psychologist is supremely important, and especially so for the young child. Preparation for exam is more important than preparation for life. How many agree with that statement?
I don't know. Probably parents do say that.
The exams are far more important than preparation for life in our schools. In our schools, are we focusing on preparation for life or preparation for exams? Both. Primarily what?
Exam.
Exams. Happens to be true even in Finland, where I've just been recently, very fortunate to have been. No, they're not focused on exams as much as we are, but still. You know, at the end, see, they don't have any formal exams till grade 10. They're actually the least examining country in the world. But still, the teachers who teach them are pretty high achievers. And they're valued in the society because they're high achievers. So somewhere along the way, people know this matters. Education, we can agree, is a complex issue. And therefore, for all those reasons why education is not working, the 19th century model is not working, we need to go back to the drawing board. We need to ask some good questions like, what is the purpose of education? You know, Stephen Covey talked about going back to the, looking at the end before the beginning. Right? This is also in Christian writings. Christ said, you know, by their fruits ye shall know them. Yeah? Ultimately, the end is what we need to look at. What are we preparing them for? And that must link to the purpose of life. What is the purpose of life? And what are the ethics on which the edifice of education, current and future, should be based? What are the underlying ethics? We saw the ethics of material. We saw the ethics of compete with others. Doesn't matter how you get there, you must get the marks. Those are the ethics that underline our education system. And if we want to bring about fundamental change in education, we need to go back and redefine the fundamental ethics. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah? So what are those fundamentally new ethics? Current education is like a medicine with an expired date. It says 19th century. Would you like to feed medicine to your own child that says 19th century on it today?
Not at all.
Not at all. We would never do that because at best it will have an uncertain outcome. Maybe it will work, and that's what's happening. We ask the question, are the children doing well in our schools because of us, the educators, or because of the parents? Who's the more defining factor? Who's having a greater impact on outcomes and achievement of the children? And their good behavior and their good moral outlook and so forth. I should think still it's the parents. So schools have to have a new responsibility, a greater responsibility. It's not about just imparting learning. It's not about education and marks. It's got to be about a lot more. So that old medicine is not working, and we need to create a new injection, a new medicine. It's like an old steam engine, 19th century invention as well. It can only go sideways. It will never be a rocket technology that takes us to the moon. A new century in which peace and harmony and there will be no poverty. You know, we can't imagine that world because we're not creating that anywhere. And you know, school should be like mirror to the future, right? It is a mirror to the future. When you look at a newspaper, it tells us what happened yesterday and today. When you look at a school, it doesn't tell us what's happening today and yesterday, it tells us what's happening in the future. So a school needs to be an ideal form of society because nowhere else can ideals be found as readily as it's a controlled environment as we can care to create in a school. So here, why do we do Bollywood, Hollywood and all that stuff in our schools? Dancing, singing, of that nature. You know, they already see it on television. Do we need to reinforce it in our schools? So we need to think deep and hard about how do we create an ideal school, a visionary school in which ideals are set, standards are set and standards are met. New standards which we can think of as being the standards for the future. It's an old building that's tumbling down. It is inadequate to meet the aspirations of the children living in the 21st century. And there's a beautiful Chinese proverb which is fantastic. It says if we do not change direction, we're likely to end up where we're headed. So when Kofi Annan says at the end of the 20th century, he said at the Millennium speech, he said that 20th century had been the most murderous and brutal in human history. So why will 21st century be different? How will 21st century be different? There are wars happening right now. Syria, awful things are happening in the world. So what will trigger the changes? Why? You know, I gave this similar sentiment, this particular quotation, but comes to my mind from a presentation I made in 2000 in University of San Diego, and a very similar one in Hawaii. So 20 years later, this is still relevant. We have not changed direction of education. So in 20 years from now, will I be giving the same presentation? It will be such a pity. And that's what's happening because we don't get time to think. We are, you know, I think of ourselves as principals and directors as chickens with their heads cut off. No time to do anything real. You know, parent says, transport nahi pahuncha, no transport. So we're running off fixing that. Teacher doesn't show up, we're fixing that. We're substituting ourselves, we're fixing things. We have no time to think. How are we going to change direction? So it's good when we get the chances like these to come together. There are many diverse objectives. Education has become like a graveyard. More is added, very little is taken out. Or nothing is taken out. Lots of diverse objectives keep getting added on. So somebody says constructivism, say great, fantastic idea, let's bring that in. Somebody says cooperative learning, say fantastic, let's do that. Somebody says inquiry, so we bring in inquiry, and so on and so forth. You know, we don't know where we're going, we just keep thinking, oh yeah, great direction, great idea. Somebody says spoken English, yeah, super, let's put that in. And so forth. So very mundane to very deeply profound changes we bring about in a very random order without any clear vision as to where we are going. So perhaps we're like Alice's in Wonderland. It's a wonderland of education and we're truly lost. So you know the story of Alice in Wonderland, that when she arrives in Wonderland, which is a land, imaginary land in which she finds herself and is lost. And so she's going around looking for a way out and chances upon a V in the road, and there was a tree and there's a Cheshire cat, a wise cat called wise Cheshire cat. So Alice, and animals can talk in Wonderland, so she asks the wise cat, dear wise cat, pray tell me which of these two roads shall I take? And what does the wise cat ask Alice? She asks, depends where you're going, right? So depends on where you're going. So Alice, where are you going? He asks Alice, and Alice says, I don't know where I'm going. So what does the wise cat say?
It doesn't matter.
If you don't know where you're going, it doesn't matter which of the two roads you take. And that's what's happening. Yeah, we don't know where we're going, so we take whichever road, whatever comes to our mind and our hunches. Einstein, he said insanity, he defined as thus. He says, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. How many of us are guilty of that? Yeah? Every year we do the same thing, we say, next year is going to be a lot better. Do we ask our teachers, what have they done different this year? What will they do different next year?
Yes.
Or next week? Do we ask our children the same question? How are we going to create anything different if we don't do different things and do things differently. So is the change we need small or big? What's your guess? How many say big change is what we need? Not small.
Small change.
How many of you say small change?
Small and small.
Like what kind of change?
First of all, we need to change our curriculum.
Curriculum, that's a small change. You talk to a government about that? Small change. All right, what else? Curriculum change. What else?
Teaching methodology.
My dear?
Teaching methodology.
Teaching methodology. Ask a teacher. What she tell you? Yeah, great, sir. I'll do it tomorrow. Okay, sir.
I go for teacher change.
Teachers teaching each other. Yeah.
No, teacher change means
Teachers training.
no, the
Change
teacher
the
way
teacher.
what you
Changing the teacher. If you don't like one, take another.
No. I mean the way the teachers are practicing in the class. They should change the way they are doing.
Okay, that's an easy change, guys.
No, that's the most important.
Yeah, so why do you say small change? Okay, please, more small changes. I want to hear them.
But that is very important.
Okay.
Most important.
Yes, I agree, of course.
Teacher said.
Practice is very, very important because everything depends on the teacher. If teacher changes her mindset, her practice and everything, gosh, we'll have a totally different school. Yes, sir. You were saying.
Changing from a teacher center to student centered teaching.
Okay, small change. Changing from teacher centric to student centric. Okay, tomorrow will you do it?
It can be done in many subjects. I have been doing that in fact.
Okay, but are you sure it's a small change?
I cannot quantify it, but I feel it is a small change since I
You
don't
feel
have
it's a small change. See, a lot of things, profound changes are already in the curriculum of the governments. When you say child-centric education, differentiated learning, you talk about every child is special. All these things are already majority of the lofty statements of most governments.
But they are not in practice.
But they're not in practice. Similarly, like about rights of women. They're given in the law, but are the women treated equally? No. So where is the small change happening? And why is the small change not happening? I emphasize small because, yes, in the end, it is not such a big thing. If you think about it, one should be able to do it. Especially if the government is saying do it, nobody's stopping us. Why is it not happening? Can we add up all these small changes and talk about perhaps education needs a major change because not happening? You still think small changes?
I can start from me.
Yes, sir.
Maybe I come in the morning or stay for long. Or I can do myself, not expecting from others.
Yeah.
That I can do.
Right, that's the Mahatma Gandhi way. Right? Change begins with me. Hmm? Right, and that is correct. That is totally correct. Okay, Finland, what they did, as you all probably know, is that they, about 22 years ago, they decided that even earlier than that, after the Second World War, they started to really think about education. They were a really poor country, and they felt, what is the most important thing? And the country as a whole decided that it would be education. And then they started, all kind of parties that would vie to be the government would have their manifestos regarding education. In many, many countries, I don't know about Nepal, the education is not even on the agenda of many politicians. Or it's a very small side issue. Right? It's not really the central agenda. They don't win or lose a political war based on
practice with the systems, about the educational systems. Like recently they changed the grading systems, and which is not really fruitful way to do this practice for the students. The before system was I used to like the before system.
a steam engine couldn't become a rocket by its transforming itself by incremental change, and or a landline phone become a smartphone. What's fundamentally different about the smartphone, initially a mobile phone? When Nokia first made its mobile phone version X, whatever it was, version 1, version 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, why do we keep making new versions? What are these new versions? Why can't we, so smart people, especially those who make the Nokia and the Samsung and all these people, and the Apple, guys, why can't they get it right in the first place? They have to keep making a new version every year.
Business impact.
It's business, money, no change, no improvement. Do you see any improvement in version 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 and so forth?
Yes.
There is improvement. That is incremental change. Because we learn by setting something out into the system, we find other things have to give. And we learn from the system and we feed back into the system. So every year we keep improving. And that is when we ask the question, can this be done any better? We are Kaizen about it. If you're using Kaizen, the Japanese thought process of continuous improvement, we will be definitely introducing incremental change, and that's necessary for every institution to grow. But will incremental change create the dramatic change that the smartphone is in comparison to a landline phone?
No, it's a very slow process. After 5 years, again, another incremental change.
Yeah.
So what happens is the overall system, in the system, it disappears from the system.
Yeah.
So what
Very true.
happens is, it always becomes obsolete.
Yeah. Right. So so what is fundamentally different about the smartphone? I mean, so many things are happening at once. When I got my first mobile phone, I was using it just like a landline phone, just for communication, because I didn't know any better. Then I started to discover there are more things in it. There are more things in it. More things in it. It's like a castle, and I was just using a room. Right? So we learn as we engage with that technology. There's so much in it. But fundamentally different because it thought about not one change, one incremental change, it thought about many changes all at once. And some were, in the principle, the guiding principle, underlying ethics of it, were dramatically different than the landline phone. And that would be termed as paradigm shift. Right? So this required a paradigm shift. And we need a paradigm shift in education. So we need to go on not just the how, and how do we teach this? Oh, use interactive whiteboard. How do we teach this? Cooperative games. It's the how, right? We need to think in terms of what. Why are we teaching what we're teaching? Internet. Why are we asking children how many planets are there? Do you know how many planets are there?
8 planets. 8 planets.
They were 8 till 2 years ago. Now they're 9 again.
9 again.
They reclassified it again. And the books are still saying 8. Those who caught up with the books, they're saying 8. The others said 9. They're still saying 9. Okay. This is the bizarreness of the kind of education we're teaching. We're trying for them to remember these names and use mnemonics and all sorts of ways to remember all the planets in a row. So we need to think deeply about what and why. We need to also think about the outer and inner, which is more important for the health of a tree, the roots or the outer form. Both are okay. So if we just feed the top and not the roots, what will happen to the tree? What is more important? We have to put hierarchy on this. Roots, right? Because when we feed the roots, the rest will take care of itself, right? So the inner is what we are forgetting in our children. If we take care of the inner, the rest will take care of itself. Even research, I'll show you John Hattie's research, fantastic. A lot of the things kids can learn by themselves. Why are we killing ourselves? We're teaching them. A lot of their teaching is nonsense. We're wasting their time. We're repeating. Look at how many computer books are saying, this is a CPU, this is, I don't know, whatever the parts are, I can still use a computer, right? So, we're teaching it till class 8, nonsensical stuff, wasting children's time. We're not rationalized. But we're not getting much either in terms of inner because we're not focused on the inner. Surely, if we focus on the inner, we'll get it. But we're not focused on the inner. We think it'll happen by itself, but it won't. A good education is one that nurtures, and I hope we can all agree with this, is the one that nurtures a good human being. A good member of a family, that's your human education, a good member of a community, and a good citizen of the world. That covers a lot of the good things that we've said about art of living and all these wonderful thoughts. So that is a good citizen of the world. That has so many things to it. And perhaps we can agree that all that we can think of in terms of profound changes or outcomes we want in education can be brought about by these 4 fundamental building blocks of education for the 21st century. And this is something that after traveling through Africa, some of the countries, I used to work for the World Bank, so thanks to them I could travel a lot. And in those planes, looking at education, seeing how terrible it is, it occurred to me and my father and mother running the schools in India while I'm globe-trotting. I used to come back and try these ideas, and one day I called up my father and I said, Papa, you have these 17 goals. CMS says these 17 things it does. Okay, how about 4? He said, okay, tell me what it is. He wrote it down. First he said, I'm really busy, call me back. So I called him back, or he called me in fact, and he said, now tell me what it is. He wrote it down, 4 things. So I mentioned these 4 things. And he wrote it down. Next month I was in India, a month later, and every branch of City Montessori School, every function, everything was on the 4 building blocks. I thought they had done it for me, but actually they were doing it for themselves. The 4 building blocks, right? Doesn't mean that they've accomplished the 4 building blocks. It just means they started on a journey of thinking, okay, all these 17 things can actually fit into these 4. And it provides a richer context maybe beyond that. For example, they do a lot of global understanding. A lot of international exchanges, teachers coming, children going, all sorts of camps, international experiences with Pakistan, and all sorts of great things are happening. But what about service to humanity? Are we doing enough in that domain? Right? So we need to think deeply about this. I think should be the new report card for our schools. These 4 building blocks. Wherever we are lacking is where we need to fill the blanks. So we may define universal values to be the spirit, or the spirit to be. These are the values and character that lead to a virtuous life, the spiritual life of the child. To what extent are our children walking out of the portals of our schools endowed with spiritual values and want to lead a virtuous life? What percentage? To the extent they are not, give yourself a rating. You know how banks rate? I was at the World Bank. We used to rank countries 4A ratings, okay, AAA ratings. So just to yourselves, give yourself A, B, C or D on universal values as we've defined it. Then let's look at global understanding. This is the U, V-U-E-S, views, 4 views of education. Global understanding, heart to love. It goes beyond Jacques Delors' UNESCO framework that he came up with in 2000, I believe, as well. And he talks about similar things. But for example, here he talks about multiculturalism. That is learning to live with others. Learning to live with others. Now, learning to live with others, I've been living in many countries. Learning to live with others can sometimes mean, hey, I don't like you, but I'll put up with you, because I must learn to live with you. We are here together, so we learn to live with each other. Now, that is a 19th century, 20th century ethic. We need to go into deeper levels of connection with other human beings. So when an Afro-American walks in the door, I treat him with equal respect as a white American. It means fundamentally I appreciate the oneness of human life, and I appreciate that we are part of one human race. And that is the heart to love. So it's a deeper sentiment. And you can't do it through flags, festivals, foods, fabrics, what you wear. In Japan, the people wear kimonos. Well, I went to Japan, hardly anybody wearing a kimono. They do bring it out once in a while. Okay? But as Vaclav Havel said, he was in one of his speeches that he was sitting there and suddenly kind of lost track of where he was, and he saw all these young people in jeans and singing to the Western music, and suddenly he realized he's in Singapore. Right? People are the same at this point in time. There was a time that there was a lot of stereotypical behavior, Indians would eat Indian food, not Chinese and so forth, but the world is becoming a very different place, and we need to inculcate the heart love. It also means respect and reverence for all forms of life. You know, we don't respect animals, we don't respect the environment. We've forgotten all this. How many of our schools are concrete buildings with no real exposure to nature, and to the extent they are not, are we compensating for it? So that human social reverence for life is an attitude that is very, very necessary. Then third is excellence in all things. How many schools do not stand for excellence? Every school stands for excellence. How do we measure excellence? My school is excellent. Why do we say my school is excellent? Because, mostly, because our board results are good. Isn't it? You say, my board results, I got so many children out of 90% and above, so my school is excellent. Now try talk to a city Montessori school principal. Their results are best in the country. Try talk to them. Will they listen to you? Say, our results are the best. We have nothing to learn. We are the best. And this is what kills all kinds of creativity and thinking. Because our equation is not enough to say because our children have done well in boards that they are good on the 4 building blocks. Right? I hope you're giving yourself rating on universal values. Excellence in all things. Excellence in all things is a redefinition of the term excellence. It means competing, it means first and foremost, looking at every single child as potentially capable of becoming a great human being, the Mahatma Gandhi, the Abraham Lincoln, and Thomas Edison of the world. So the backbencher, I can visualize Mahatma Gandhi was a backbencher.